Welcome everyone to the first edition of Power Chat. My name is Brian DeStefano. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering and Technical Services here at RS. Today I'm joined by Tristan Walter and Sabrina Ramos, Sales Engineers at RS. Welcome guys.
Thank you for having us, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here.
So Tristan and Sabrina, if you wouldn't mind to take a few moments, introduce yourselves.
Awesome. My name is Sabrina Ramos. I am a sales engineer here at RS. My background is in civil engineering, and I have been in the industry for about 3 years. I used to design overhead transmission lines before coming to resilient structures, so that's where my technical expertise really lie.
Awesome.
Hey, I'm Tristan Walter. I've been a sales engineer here at RS for about a year, and before that I was a senior product engineer. My background is in mechanical engineering and civil engineering degree, and I've done a lot of transmission distribution design and engineering work, and prior to that I was in electrical construction, so I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, and I too am very happy and excited to be here with you guys at our largest facility here in Houston. So today we're going to have somewhat of an interesting and controversial topic to talk about. We're going to talk about and explore some common myths surrounding the composite pole industry. We're going to talk a little bit about the products and what people in the industry are saying about composite poles, and specifically we're going to discuss composite pole use cases, their environmental impact, the surface life around composite poles and how it differs to other materials, and how composite poles fit into a utility's disaster response plan, which is obviously something that our customers care very much about. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds great. Let's get going.
All right.
Let's do this.
So as we speak to our customers, and as I've personally spoke to them, and as I know you guys have as well, a lot of times our customers feel that we are trying to tell them that composite poles should be used everywhere for every circumstance. What do you guys think about that?
Well, it's a strategic solution, not a universal one. At Resilient Structures, we like to focus on 3 use cases mainly. So your hard to access locations. At RS, we actually have a solution, the GIN pole, where you can install up to a 70-foot pole, as well as those structures that are critical infrastructure or circuits. So think of circuits that are feeding into data centers or having heavy and large equipment that you don't want coming down, as well as harsh environments, so storms, pests, corrosion issues. So we actually have a line in the Utah Salt Lake. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. So Tristan, what about when customers are concerned about wildfire-prone regions, right? Many people feel or think that composite poles burn similar to wood or other materials. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wood, as you know, would burn in a heartbeat and feed the fire and make it worse, right? So composite poles are actually, they resist ignition and they don't combust because they're made out of a thermoset resin. So they, when they're exposed to heat, they do not melt. And at RS, we've simulated some of these wildfires and exposed these poles that we create up to 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And we've taken those poles back to testing for strength and so forth, and there's been minimal loss in strength. However, they do survive these fires. So it makes a really good option for our customers to put these poles in high fire threat zones.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if I was a customer in wildfire prone region, I would definitely be interested in that solution as well. This next one is interesting, right? Because wooden poles being basically trees, natural products, right? Organic materials. People feel that sometimes that those materials are better for the environment, right? Our product being a composite, people think that sometimes it's more toxic or worse for the environment. What are your thoughts?
Well, composite poles are non-chemically treated, so they don't have chemicals such as penta, CAAs, that are harsh for the environment and that can leach into soil or water. They're inert and they really don't harm our environment. When you look at the bigger picture, composites really is the way to go. They're safer for our environment, and over time, it's better for the utility.
Yeah,
they're longer lasting. So
that's interesting. Yeah, definitely a good solution for folks who are interested in environmental impact. So, as you both know, here at RS, we've invested a lot of money over the past 30 years, over $400 million in research and development of our product. The company began back in 1995, and since then, as I mentioned, we've invested a whole lot of money in research and development. There are people out there that say that composite pole service life claims are not trustworthy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I got this one for sure. You can imagine something like the new product, you would be kind of hesitant on some data and results, but let's first take a step back and look at wood poles, right? So wood is an organic material. This means it's got a high coefficient of variance, and what that means is that factors play into a role with wood. So when the tree is growing, it depends on what kind of the species of trees and other environmental impacts that will affect the strength of the pole. So you're going to have you have data that's all over the place sometimes, and that's what the high coefficient of variance means. So with a composite pole, that's low coefficient of variance, meaning that it's an engineered product and you're going to get similar test results when you do testing. And so RS has done extensive testing, whether it's strength testing, high exposure to harsh UV, up to 80 years in Miami, we like to say, of exposure, and we've done much more. We've actually installed some poles back in as early as 2005, and those poles are all still standing and doing well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is probably our largest concern, I would say, from customers. Safe, reliable electric service is a top priority to utility companies all over the world, obviously, right? Many of them have to compete with Mother Nature on a regular basis. Composite poles, especially the ones that we make here at RS, are designed to, quote unquote, weather the storm, right? There's a myth out there about the assumption that composite poles frequently fail and the supply of them is limited, similar to other materials, by the way. Where do we stand with that?
Well, true resiliency is about preventing those failures in the first place, and composites have stood the test of time. They've beat out a lot of multiple category 4 or 5 storms, as well as resisted fire, where wood has equivalently failed. We see our poles a lot in coastal regions, in the Gulf Coast, as well as even internationally in the US Virgin Islands, as well as in the Grand Bahamas. Now, when we look at the fire side, we see them in the areas of Southern California. RS has made very large progress in placing and strategically placing our manufacturing plants in North America to ensure a reliable and making sure that our composite poles are where they need to be.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I like the point you made about strategically locating our plants throughout the continent of North America. That really gets us closer to our customers and allows us to supply their needs as these storms hit, right? Yep. This question is something that I, in my experience here, have gotten at almost every customer meeting. I know that you guys have had very similar experience. But some people believe that composite poles perform poorly during motor vehicle accidents, right? How do our poles perform when they're hit by motor vehicles?
Yeah, I love this question, Brian. We get this one a lot. So when you're thinking about the pole being hit by a vehicle, regardless if it's wood or other material, it's going to most likely break. But let's talk about the occupants in the car that are hitting this pole. So when it comes to our poles, you can see that it's clearly just a thin, hollow structure. It's not solid. So you can imagine that the impact is going to absorb when it's going to hit something like this. So what happens is when a car hits the pole, the duration of the impact is longer. So that reduces the collision force. And so most of the time, we've done a case study with a car hitting both a wood pole and a composite pole, and the impact force was actually half of that of a wood pole. So you can imagine that it's a lot safer for people that were to potentially hit this car, that they have a higher chance of survival.
Yeah, that's really, really exciting and very encouraging, because I do know also, at least in the United States, there's a lot of DOTs that prevent specific types of materials close to their roadways for that exact purpose, right? Whenever I talk to customers about this, I always ask the customer, are you more concerned about the pole or are you more concerned about the occupants of the vehicle? And in this case, composite poles are much safer for the vehicle occupants than any other material.
Absolutely. I mean, you can even compare it to new cars, right? So old cars back in the 50s, they would hit something and they wouldn't break because they're not absorbing any energy. But new cars, they're designed and engineered to crush and to absorb that impact. So
I love that analogy. Yeah, that's great. Great, good stuff. You know something, that's some really interesting topics. You know, we do find, because composite poles are relatively new to the industry, that there are a lot of myths out there. These are just some of them that we're talking about today. But now I'd actually like to turn it over to the audience and find out if there's any other questions out there that we haven't covered here in this short time that we've been speaking. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to let the audience hit us with as much as they have, and we'll see what we can answer. All right, so going to the audience, we're gonna take some questions. First question up, I see here, they ask, can composite poles only be direct embedded? This is a foundation question.
Okay, I can answer that one if you want. So our poles can be embedded in all different ways, especially at different foundations that you see with wood or steel. We can do flange mounts. We can do backfill that involves foam or any kind of aggregate. So there's really no constraints, but we have an awesome engineering team here at RS. So if you do have any questions that are maybe a little bit more unique than the standard embedment practices, please reach out to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Sabrina, actually, you and I worked specifically on a very odd embedment or foundation question from an international customer. They were looking to put poles on a temporary basis, and they were looking to mount it to a temporary foundation. Yep. And we actually did have an engineering solution for that, right?
They were just mounting it on it was basically like a tire. Think of a tire solution, and then a conical, and just sticking our pole right through it. I mean, it was a great solution. There were a little bit of challenges, but like Tristan said, our engineering team is amazing, and we're able to figure it out.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, next question. How long does it take to create a pole from start to finish?
Well, when we're talking about a pole, we have to first talk about the modules that make the pole. For either the smaller module combinations or the larger ones, they take about 45 minutes. The difference here with a smaller module, you can actually get 2 module sections, while on the bigger module, it's just 1 module. And then from those modules, you can actually combine and get your pole.
Yeah, makes sense. So I guess really the point of that whole thing is to create a module and then a pole really doesn't take a lot of time. Nope. And that's really the reason why we're able to supply our poles to customers as needed with very relatively low lead times, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. We got some more questions. All right, Tristan, this one I'm going to hand over to you. Are composite poles easy to drill?
Yes, they're actually extremely easy to drill. You can imagine, like the other example I was giving you, see how thin the wall is, right? So it doesn't take much to get through that pole. You can compare that to steel, that you're going to need a very heavy duty drill bit, and you're going to run through tons of those when you're drilling maybe 2 holes. With ours, it just requires a carbide tip, and it's super easy, and it's definitely easier than wood and faster than steel.
Yeah. Are there any specialized drills or bits that are necessary for our poles?
A carbide tip is fine. I know Milwaukee makes one, and that's usually what we recommend when drilling out in the field for our poles.
Easy to obtain, right?
Super easy.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Let's see here. Next question. So Sabrina, here's an interesting one. So why would a utility consider composites over wood, steel, or concrete in the first place?
I mean, that's one of our use cases. So depending on the area that you're looking for, if you have a hard to access location, so let's say on the cliffside of a mountain or even in someone's backyard, you don't have to use heavy machinery. You don't have these big foundations. So that's one advantage that composites have, as well as with steel. You don't have to deal with the corrosion. So think of coastal areas, like I said before, the Utah salt flats. Yeah, that's a very big advantage that we have.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I would add, and you alluded to it with the corrosion, is our product's completely maintenance free, which is nice to have, right?
No retreatment, no going back out there. You can plop it in and
set it and forget it.
Set it and forget
it. All right, Tristan, we got another one coming in here. Okay, are composite poles safer to work with when compared to other materials?
For sure. So one thing to note is that composite poles are very light. So when you want to even compare this to wood, it's about 1/3 of the weight. And you can imagine working with a lighter material is always considered safer. Now we want to compare this to steel. Steel is obviously a lot heavier than wood, and it is a metal which is very conductive. So you can imagine we're working with electricity. A lot of dangers are faced with that. So with our pole, it has a very high dielectric strength. So you have a safer material working around live wires and so forth, which has been a reason why a lot of companies like working with our pole compared to steel. And it's also got self-washing properties. So when there is contaminants on the pole will wash that off and help with tracking. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, so you're saying if a pole collected some type of contaminants, let's say salt spray from a nearby street in a snowy area or something like that, that the pole will literally just wash itself and maybe in the next rainfall or something like that.
Yep, and the humidity, and it'll look just as shiny as this one we have right here.
Wow. Okay, great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, let's keep going with the questions here. We got lots of them. Where do you see composite poles going in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, we can even see the shift now. What's happening now? I mean, grid resiliency and making our grid stronger. Composites is really the way to go. Just this year, we've seen an exponential growth in composites being used. So I couldn't imagine in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because now is really a time where we're starting to see a huge adoption of these products because they've been in industry for a while. We're even starting to see some of our own customers ramp up their pole replacement programs with composite poles for that grid resiliency aspect. That's great. Okay. Total cost of ownership, right? We get these budgetary questions from time to time. Our product is, it's priced accordingly. Some people compare that to wood or to other materials, obviously. So when it comes to our product, how do composite poles, specifically our composite pole, fit into a company's budget model from a total cost of ownership perspective?
Absolutely. So you can look at it. Obviously, it's a nicer product than wood, and that's going to cost more. So these poles aren't cheap, but that comes with all of the awesome things we just discussed today, right? Talking about vehicle collisions, impacting the community, safety, easy to work with, and never having to go back and put treatment in it or check on it. Like we said, set it and forget it. With that being said, our poles will last for over 80 years, and compared to wood, that's awesome. So think about that as a total cost of ownership. You invest into something one time and you don't have to worry about it ever again. Yeah, that's going to cost a little bit more money, but would you buy a $5,000 car hoping that it's going to last for 30 years, or are you going to buy a very nice car that's 30 years might be a little exaggerating for a vehicle, but you can get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Is that you would
you're
rather
guaranteed
a car that's going to last you. And also look at the safety. Are you going to buy your daughter a $5,000 car when she turns 16, or are you going to buy her maybe a $20,000 car that has the safety, the warranty, and the longevity that she's going to be able to drive that through college and be safe?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I would like to add too, what sometimes folks don't talk about is the installed cost, right? So when you compare our product, maybe not directly to wood, but when you compare it to concrete or to steel, where steel a lot of times will have concrete foundations. Concrete, you need heavy machinery. Installing our pole is very, very easy. It's very lightweight, and it installs the exact same way a wood pole would be installed. So the installed cost, I would argue, is less. And like you said, there's zero maintenance, right? So you're gonna buy it once, and you're never gonna have to put money back into that pole for its life, right? So I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it also should resonate well with procurement departments throughout the utility industry, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take another question. Sabrina, this one's gonna be for you. All right. So obviously we have lots of customers, right? We have over 500 customers in over 30 countries. Can you give us an idea of what, I guess, utilities in certain regions, what they're using them in their resiliency or grid hardening plans? Do you have any information about that?
Yeah, of course. In Southern California, we see a lot of our poles in those fire-prone regions. Here in the coastal areas as well as the Gulf Coast, internationally, like I said before, U.S. Virgin Islands, the Grand Bahamas. We actually have a line in the Grand Bahamas that has been installed, and that line has survived 2 hurricanes already, 2 Cat 4 or 5 hurricanes. So you can definitely see them there. And those are some of the areas, can't say customers, but those are the areas that we see it a lot.
So what about in like the northeastern regions? I know that they get hurricanes, they get a lot of ice loading.
Ice loading, as well as the woodpeckers. We can't forget, woodpeckers are very damaging to wood poles, so that's where you see it a lot in that the northern east region, as well as in the center of the country here in the States.
Canada as well, right?
In Canada.
Yeah, they have pretty harsh weather up there. A lot of folks also talk about in really cold environments, how does that impact the material science of the composite pole, right? And I don't, if you guys aren't aware, I just learned this myself from our chief technology officer here in the company. When our poles get cold, they actually become stiffer, and it doesn't impact them negatively at all. And so we could basically put our pole in any kind of environment, regardless of temperature, from the coldest to the hottest, and have no significant impact on its performance, which is really cool.
Yeah, so with the fact of the temperature changing in harsh and hot environments or cold, our pole doesn't change its shape. It stays the same, so that helps out a lot with companies using our poles for switches or a lot of equipment that's on there, because the bolts won't loosen or get tighter and cause other damage, so you never have to go back out there and check your bolts or anything like that. So it's another use case for a lot of companies liking to use our poles for those reasons. Yeah.
Right, so the freeze-thaw aspect of the pole really doesn't impact it, right?
No.
So when you torque down a nut, and I know that we always recommend that you torque it to only 50 foot-pounds, right? Which is not a lot,
much,
right? But the idea is I could torque it to 50 foot-pounds, and it could go through an entire freeze-thaw cycle, and it would still be tight.
Yep, you're not going to have a loose cross arm or anything like that, and that's critical, especially having all that heavy equipment that's hanging from these poles.
No, that's a great point. Great point. Okay, so I mean, we've got a lot of questions on the board here. Unfortunately, we will have to follow up with the folks that we weren't able to answer live. But first, I'd just like to really thank you guys for joining me here today to talk about our company, our product, and just how much it's impacting the utility industry. Right? There's still a lot of myths out there about composite poles. As I mentioned, the industry is really starting to adopt it, so hopefully these myths are dispelled even more as we move forward into the future. But once again, I'd really like to thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for all your insights and for answering the questions, and I hope you guys have safe travels back home.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Brian. Bye.
So that wraps up our this edition of Power Chat. As I mentioned, we still do have lots of questions on the board. We are happy to answer all the questions that you have. We will be getting back to you directly through email. If there are any other questions about our product or our company, please feel free to drop us a line. There is our email address is displayed on the screen. You could use that email address to get in touch with us. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.